He walked in with a hoodie and a smile, but left in silence, humiliated by people who had no idea who he really was. When Michael B. Jordan was denied a table, mocked, and tossed aside like trash by a posh restaurant staff, it wasn't just disrespect, it struck a nerve rooted deep in childhood pain and generational struggle. But when Gordon Ramsay showed up the next day, the heat in the kitchen wasn't coming from the stove. What happens when power meets cruelty, and how do you forgive the unforgivable? What would you do if you were in his shoes? Michael B. Jordan wasn't trying to make a scene. On that quiet Tuesday evening in Los Angeles, he wore no designer suit, no entourage trailed behind him. Just a hoodie, jeans, and a pair of scuffed sneakers. Deliberate choices that let him blend in with the city's rhythm. He walked into Orem, a high-end culinary hotspot that boasted exclusivity and VIP experiences on every brochure and website. But tonight, Michael wasn't seeking glamour, he was chasing a memory, something deeper. Yet the moment he stepped through the restaurant's tall, glass doors, all he found was disdain. A hostess, barely glancing up from her podium, pursed her lips. "Reservations?" she asked coldly. Michael gave his name quietly, thinking it might spark some recognition. It didn't. "Sorry, sir. We're fully booked." "Maybe try the diner down the block," she said with a smirk. He chuckled softly, trying to diffuse the tension. "I just wanted a quick bite at the bar," he offered. That's when the maître d', a tall man with slicked back hair and a voice oozing condescension, walked over. "We don't seat walk-ins." "Not unless you're someone important," he sneered, eyes raking Michael up and down like he was a stain on the marble floor. Laughter bubbled behind the counter. One waiter leaned in to whisper, "Who let the broke podcast guy in?" That one stung. But Michael held his composure. He'd been here before, not in this restaurant, but in places just like it. Rooms where people judged him by the color of his skin, the clothes on his back, and not the worth in his soul. He quietly turned around and left. But what none of them realized, what made this moment so explosive in retrospect, was who had just walked out. They hadn't just disrespected an A-list actor, a philanthropist, or even a global icon. They'd dismissed a man who once skipped meals to afford acting classes. A man whose love for food came from watching his mother stir pots of hope on a cracked stove. And this restaurant? It wasn't random. Orem now stood where his mother's favorite diner once thrived, a humble place where the staff knew your name, poured your coffee with a smile, and served up hope alongside hash browns. That diner closed down when Orem's investors bulldozed the lot and replaced it with chandeliers and snobbery. Michael didn't lash out. He didn't call for a manager or drop names. He simply exited, shoulders heavy not with pride, but with heartbreak. He walked 2 blocks away, sat on a bench, and stared at the glowing skyline. He wondered how far he'd really come if this was still his reality. But what he didn't know was that someone else had witnessed it all. Someone known for throwing frying pans and temper tantrums. Someone who knew exactly what kind of poison festers behind gilded kitchen doors. Gordon Ramsay, watching from across the street after a late meeting, had seen enough. Before the world knew him as Eric Killmonger, Adonis Creed, or the man crowned people's sexiest, Michael B. Jordan was just Mike from Newark. A boy with dreams too big for the block he lived on and a mother who held everything together with grit and garlic powder. Donna Jordan, a nurse who worked double shifts, believed that food was more than sustenance, it was therapy, celebration, and in many ways, salvation. She'd drag her weary feet into their small apartment after 16-hour days, drop her purse on the floor, and still make time to fry chicken just the way Michael liked it, extra crispy, never greasy. They didn't have much, but they had Sunday dinners, laughter over mac and cheese, and conversations about life while peeling potatoes. Michael's father, who had once been a cook in the Navy, left when Michael was just 7. His absence became a quiet ache, filled by the clatter of pots and his mother's humming in the kitchen. It was in those moments, surrounded by warmth, scent, and storytelling, that Michael found stability. Their favorite spot wasn't glamorous. It was a hole-in-the-wall diner called Tina's Table, nestled on the corner of a now bustling LA street. When Michael moved with his mom to California to pursue acting, they'd scraped together enough for pancakes there every other Sunday. The waitresses knew them by name. The cook, a grizzled man named Reggie, let Michael watch him flip burgers through the kitchen window. Tina's table was where he celebrated his first background acting job. Where his mother hugged him after every audition, successful or not. It was the one place that remained untouched by the chaos of Hollywood auditions, rejections, and the long, cold nights of wondering if he'd ever make it. He remembered how it all changed the day he booked a major role. He came back to Tina's table with a check in hand and tears in his eyes, promising his mother that one day he'd buy the place. But money has a way of accelerating change, and not always the kind you hope for. Before Michael could act, Tina's was sold off to developers promising revitalization. In just 6 months, it was torn down. In its place rose Aurum, a gold-plated monstrosity for the elite, a symbol of wealth built over memories paved in nostalgia. Michael never got over it. Even with millions in his bank account, he still carried the guilt of not protecting the one place that gave him peace. That's why walking into Aurum wasn't about dinner. It was about confronting ghosts. It was about standing in the space where his mother once sipped burnt coffee with love in her eyes. He had come not for vengeance or validation, but for closure. But what he received was rejection that pierced deeper than any Hollywood snub. In that moment, he wasn't Michael B. Jordan, the global icon. He was Mike from Newark again, being told, yet again, that he didn't belong. That night, as he sat in silence on the bench 2 blocks away, his phone buzzed with missed calls and unread messages from producers, publicists, even fans. He didn't care. He stared at the restaurant, the lights, the valet, the people walking in like royalty. He remembered his mother's voice. "They can't take away your worth, baby. Not unless you hand it to them." But it was hard not to feel like he just had. The weight of past and present pressed down like an iron skillet. And as fate would have it, in the shadows of that painful moment, someone else saw the whole picture. Gordon Ramsay, sitting in the back of a black SUV, sipping his post-meeting espresso, had witnessed everything. From the arrogant maître d' to the smirking hostess, to the way Michael's shoulders slumped, not with ego, but exhaustion. Gordon knew what that kind of dismissal felt like. He'd clawed his way up from kitchens where people barked orders and threw pans. He had seen the same poison. Prejudice wrapped in politeness, exclusion disguised as policy. But seeing it done to Michael, in a place that erased a community diner to erect a temple of arrogance, that lit a fire in Gordon's chest hotter than any flame in Hell's Kitchen. The next morning, Aurum buzzed with the same self-important energy it always did. Polished silverware gleamed under spotlights designed to mimic natural daylight. Waiters rehearsed their menu scripts in whispers, and the maître d', Roland, adjusted his tailored jacket for the 10th time, pausing only to sneer at a dishwasher who made too much noise stacking plates. No one spoke of the man they'd kicked out the night before. If anything, they laughed about it. One hostess mimicked his expression as she mockingly begged for a table. Another joked about how the homeless-looking guy walked like he owned the place. They even took bets on whether he'd try coming back. But by midday, that laughter froze, because someone else did come back. Not the man from last night. Someone arguably more intimidating. Someone with a sharper tongue than a butcher's knife and a reputation for detonating careers with a single word. He wore a plain blue shirt and jeans, but his face was unmistakable. Gordon Ramsay entered not like a celebrity, but like a secret shopper with fury simmering beneath the surface. He didn't announce himself. He asked for a table, didn't use his name, and kept his accent low and clipped. But the staff still didn't recognize him. That was their first mistake. "We're fully booked," Roland replied, without checking the system. "Surely there's something at the bar?" Gordon asked calmly. "The bar is for preferred guests," came the icy response. Gordon narrowed his eyes. He tilted his head slightly, scanning the restaurant. "What's preferred mean? White enough?" The question cut like a cleaver. Silence fell for half a second before Roland sputtered, "Excuse me." But Gordon was already walking out. He returned 20 minutes later. This time, he didn't come alone. Behind him stood a quiet man in a tailored grey suit, Aurum's primary investor. Within minutes, the restaurant's atmosphere turned electric with tension. Gordon spoke little. He simply asked the investor for permission to observe service from the back. The man agreed, intrigued. Hidden behind a frosted glass divider, Gordon watched. He listened. He saw how customers with designer labels were offered amuse-bouches while others, more plainly dressed, were overlooked. He noted how the staff mocked patrons as soon as they left the table. He heard a waiter refer to a woman's accent as ghetto British and how Roland denied a walk-in who happened to be a construction worker, saying they had no space, despite 3 tables clearly sitting empty. It didn't take long for the heat to rise. Gordon pulled out his phone and began recording. Not for social media. Not yet. For proof. For precision. For the confrontation he was planning. The final straw came when a middle-aged man in scrubs, likely a nurse finishing a long shift, was told his presence didn't fit the aesthetic. The man left quietly, just as Michael had. That was it. Gordon stood up, stormed out from the shadows, and threw open the kitchen doors with the force of a hurricane. Everyone, stop. The room froze. Knives halted mid-chop. Pans hissed. Roland blinked, confused, until realization swept over him like cold oil in a hot pan. "Mr. Ramsay," he stammered. "Is there something we can get you?" Gordon's eyes burned. "What I want is an explanation," he growled. "An explanation for why this place reeks of perfume and prejudice." His voice was calm, but the weight behind each word felt like a slap. "You turned away a man last night. A man you mocked, humiliated, threw out because he didn't wear the right shoes. Do you know who he was?" Roland remained silent. "Michael B. Jordan," Gordon spat. Gasps echoed across the dining room. Plates clattered to the floor. One waitress covered her mouth. "You kicked out a man whose name is known in every corner of the world because you judged his hoodie. You laughed at him. You insulted him. You embarrassed him." He paused. "But more than that, you embarrassed yourselves." No one dared move. Gordon stepped forward. This restaurant was built on the ruins of Tina's table, a place where anyone could sit, anyone could eat, and no one was made to feel small. Michael grew up eating there. His mother found peace there. You tore it down and replaced it with this temple of gold and ego. His voice rose now, commanding the entire building. "You're not serving cuisine. You're serving contempt. And I'm going to make sure the world sees exactly what's cooking in here." With that, Gordon turned to the investor. "Shut it down," he said simply. "At least until every member of this staff has been replaced or retrained. This isn't just a toxic workplace, it's a stain on this entire street." The investor nodded, stunned. "As of this moment, Orem is closed." Gasps rang out again. Staff scattered like ants in boiling water. Roland tried to protest, but Gordon cut him off with one look. "You had a chance to offer kindness. Instead, you served cruelty. Hope you enjoyed your last shift." 2 days after the restaurant's dramatic shutdown, the news had spread like wildfire. Paparazzi loitered across the street, influencers live-streamed tearful rants about cancel culture ruining brunch, and food critics scrambled to rewrite their 5-star reviews of Orem into exposés on its hidden elitism. But inside Gordon Ramsay's private kitchen, far from the glare of cameras, something far more important was brewing. Gordon wasn't interested in sensationalism, he was interested in justice. He had called in a select group of staff from Orem, some summoned by curiosity, others by obligation. But one chair at the stainless steel counter remained deliberately empty. Michael's chair. Gordon didn't want to ambush him. He wanted to give him the chance to reclaim the space, on his terms. The few staff who showed up, 2 servers, 1 busboy, and the pastry chef, arrived nervous, fidgety, avoiding eye contact. Gordon didn't yell. "Not yet." He handed them each a menu. "Read the names," he said. They scanned the page, confused. Michael's mac and cheese. Donna's cornbread. Reg's ribeye. Gordon leaned in. "Do you know who those people are?" Silence. "They're the people who raised the man you humiliated." The busboy lowered his head. Gordon continued, voice softer now but laced with steel. "Michael B. Jordan didn't come into your restaurant expecting a red carpet. He didn't need special treatment. He just wanted a moment of peace in a place that once meant something to him. And you turned that into a battlefield." He then did something no one expected. He opened the doors to the kitchen and brought in a camera crew. But this wasn't for reality TV. This was for something far more personal, an apology. Gordon was producing a documentary series about the culture of hospitality, both the warmth it should offer and the rot hiding behind five-star facades. Orem was now a chapter. But Gordon knew the climax was missing one thing: Michael. So he called him. "No pressure," Gordon said into the phone. "But I think you deserve to hear what's being said in this room. You don't have to talk. Just show up. Or don't. Entirely up to you." For a long moment, the line was quiet. Then, Michael's voice, low and calm, "I'll be there." An hour later, the room changed the moment he stepped in. No cameras followed him. No entourage. Just Michael, hoodie on again, expression unreadable. The staff who had once laughed at him now couldn't meet his gaze. Gordon motioned to the empty chair. Michael sat down without a word. He looked at the menu, the names, the dishes inspired by his mother's kitchen, and exhaled slowly. "You want me to say something?" he asked. Gordon nodded. Michael looked around. "I've spent years learning how to walk into a room without apologizing for who I am. But that night, you made me feel 12 again. Like I was back in Newark, getting followed in stores or ignored at diners because of how I looked." He paused, eyes locked on the maître d', who had finally shown up, his arrogance now melted into shame. Michael continued. "This wasn't just about me. It was about every person who walks into a place hoping to be treated like a human being, and gets reminded that in some people's eyes, we're invisible." He turned to Gordon. "You didn't have to get involved. But you did. You used your voice when it would have been easier to stay quiet." Gordon didn't speak. He didn't need to. Michael stood. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to make sure this doesn't happen again. To me, or anyone else who doesn't come in wearing a suit and watch worth 5 digits. Then, something unexpected happened. One of the servers, the youngest, spoke up. "I was scared," she said, trembling. "Everyone else was laughing, and I didn't know how to speak up. I wanted to say something. I didn't. And I'm sorry." Michael nodded. "Then say it louder next time. Say it when it matters." The room stayed quiet. But something shifted. In that moment, the air wasn't thick with tension, it was heavy with truth. Gordon stepped forward. "This is what fire in the kitchen looks like. Not just flames, but accountability. Honesty. Guts." He looked at the camera crew. "This part doesn't go on the show. This is just for us." The following day, under the filtered light of an overcast morning, Michael returned to Orem, not as a diner, but as a symbol. The once bustling restaurant stood silent, its gold signage now dull without the glow of public adoration. The front doors were unlocked, but no customers waited in line. Inside, the walls echoed with a strange emptiness, stripped of the noise that once covered the rot. Gordon had gathered the remaining staff, some of whom had resigned, while others were being offered one final moment to face what they tried to ignore. The camera crew was gone. This wasn't for a show or social media post. This was personal. Gordon believed in redemption, but only when earned. And today, redemption had to be earned in the presence of the man they'd thrown out like garbage. The air inside was taut, like a held breath. Michael stood near the bar, the same bar they'd said was for preferred guests, but now he stood at its center, all eyes reluctantly drawn to him. Gordon didn't speak first. He let the silence stretch until it snapped under its own weight. Michael's voice broke it, low and composed. "You don't know what it feels like to be treated like trash when your whole life, you've tried to make yourself unignorable. You work harder, smile wider, achieve more than anyone expects, and still, you're only seen when someone needs a photo. Or when you fit the version of success they're comfortable with." He looked at the hostess who had first turned him away. Her face was pale. "But when you walk in hungry, dressed like you belong to the world and not a red carpet, you're dismissed. That night wasn't new to me. What made it worse was where it happened. This place. This ground. These walls." He placed a worn photo on the bar. It was a picture of him as a teen, smiling beside his mother in front of the original Tina's Table diner that once stood on that exact spot. This place was sacred once. It fed people who didn't have reservations or dress codes or net worths. You took that memory and turned it into marble and mirrors. He looked around the room. But what you really served was a reminder that no amount of fame can protect you from being unseen when the world decides you're disposable. Gordon stepped forward. Michael's not asking for your guilt. He's not even asking for an apology. He's asking you to understand what you represent every time you ignore someone who walks in here. Hospitality isn't about luxury. It's about humanity. And if you can't serve that, you have no business in this industry. He turned to the staff. Now's the time. You want to say something? Say it. To him. Not to me. One by one, voices hesitantly broke the silence. The pastry chef, who had worked there for years, whispered, "I knew who you were. I didn't speak up. I was scared of losing my job." Michael nodded. Silence is still a choice. Another waiter added, "We were told to prioritize appearances, not people. We created a culture of cruelty. I'm sorry." But it was Roland, the maître d', who had the room holding its collective breath. His arrogance had long been the spine of Orum's toxicity. Now, stripped of his title, standing without the armor of position, he approached Michael. "I thought I was upholding standards. But I was just gatekeeping for my own ego," he admitted, voice shaking. "You deserved better. I failed. And I accept that." He extended his hand. Michael didn't shake it. He simply said, "Words are start. But change takes more than confessions, it takes action." Gordon nodded in agreement. "Which is why this place won't reopen with the same name. It's not going back to what it was. It's going to become what it should have been all along. A place where everyone's welcome. Where the food tells a story, not just a price tag." He turned to Michael. "I want you to design the first dish on the new menu. Name it. Own it." Michael was quiet for a long time. Then he smiled. "Call it Second Chances. And make sure it's the biggest portion on the menu." Laughter broke the tension. Not forced, not performative, just real. Honest. Healing. The meeting ended not with applause, but with purpose. Each person left the room carrying more than they came in with, a lesson, a regret, or a second chance. And Michael walked out without anger, without bitterness. He didn't need revenge. He had something stronger, dignity, and the power to rebuild what was stolen. In that quiet exit, he reclaimed everything they tried to strip away from him. And Gordon, watching from the doorway, knew the heat in the kitchen had finally given birth to something nourishing. Weeks passed, and the golden letters that once spelled Orum were taken down, replaced by a new name carved into wood, not steel, Tina's Table Reimagined. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't trying to impress the elite. It was a love letter to what once was and a blueprint for what could be. The windows were no longer tinted. The marble floors were replaced with warm wood panels reclaimed from old church pews in Newark, personally selected by Michael. The lighting was soft, the kitchen now semi-open, so guests could watch their food being crafted, not just cooked. And the first thing anyone saw when they entered wasn't a maître d' with a clipboard, but a wall of black and white photographs. Community figures, nurses, mechanics, mothers, artists, those who'd fed the world in ways that didn't make headlines. At the center of that wall was Donna Jordan, holding a ladle and laughing, her spirit eternally infused into the space she'd once found comfort in. Opening night wasn't packed with influencers or celebrities. It was filled with people who remembered Tina's table before it was raised, people who had eaten there decades ago and thought it lost forever. Michael stood by the door, not announcing his presence, just watching. He greeted each person like family, shaking hands with elderly women who remembered his first auditions and hugging young kids who only knew him from movie posters. There were no VIP sections. No closed curtains. Everyone sat together, shoulder to shoulder, over meals served with care. The new head chef was a formerly overlooked line cook named Matteo who had once been rejected from Orum for not fitting the brand. Now, he led the kitchen with a team that reflected every corner of Los Angeles. Diverse, passionate, and unafraid to season with soul. Gordon watched quietly from the back corner table, sipping his tea instead of wine, letting the food and energy speak louder than any review could. He didn't interfere. His work was done. He had used his voice not to center himself but to amplify someone else's pain into something powerful. A former waitress, now the front-of-house manager, walked by, placed a plate gently in front of Michael, and smiled. It was the new signature dish. Second chances, just like he asked. Collard greens braised in smoked garlic butter. Cornbread infused with rosemary. Mac and cheese with 3 kinds of cheese and a breadcrumb crust that crackled with every bite. It wasn't gourmet by Michelin standards. But it was gourmet by memory. Gourmet by love. Later that evening, a man in a tailored suit entered, glancing around like he'd wandered into the wrong building. It was Roland. He looked different. Smaller. He approached the bar, where a young man wiped glasses. "I don't expect a seat," Roland began. "I just came to see what became of the place." The bartender, without blinking, slid a menu toward him. "Everyone gets a seat now," he said simply. Roland looked stunned. Humbled. He sat quietly, alone, flipping through the menu filled with dishes that weren't just meals but memories reimagined. No one cheered for him. No one kicked him out. That was the new rule, justice through inclusion, not vengeance. As the evening wound down, Michael stepped outside. The sky was purple with the last breath of daylight, and a breeze carried the faint scent of fried onions and baked hope. He pulled out his phone, looked at an old voicemail from his mother, her telling him to keep his chin up, no matter how many doors close, and smiled. That message had once made him cry in parking lots after auditions. Now it was the root of a revolution. This wasn't just a restaurant reopening. It was a reclamation. A quiet victory over the people and systems that tried to shrink him. The story could have ended with rage, or a lawsuit, or a media firestorm. But instead, it ended with tables filled with laughter, plates emptied by gratitude, and a space reborn in his mother's image. The press eventually wrote their stories. The headlines came and went. Michael B. Jordan and Gordon Ramsay tear down toxic fine dining. Celebrity justice or redemption theater. But Michael didn't care about the headlines. He cared about the woman who came in every Sunday after church and ordered the same exact meal because it reminded her of her late husband. He cared about the busboy who now trained new hires in kindness before menus. He cared about the way Tina's table felt like home again, not just to him, but to everyone who walked in. And while Gordon quietly slipped out the back that night, Michael remained. He wasn't there to celebrate. He was there to serve. He walked table to table, clearing plates, pouring water, and asking guests about their favorite dishes. One young girl tugged on his sleeve and whispered, "You're that movie guy, right?" He leaned down and smiled. "Tonight, I'm just the guy bringing your dessert." She giggled, and for the first time in years, Michael felt not like a celebrity, not like a target, but like a man whose legacy wasn't built on cameras or awards, but on dignity, resilience, and love.